All right, let's get right into it. We're heading back to the 18th century to unpack the wild story of a man who was, well, he was either a prophet with some seriously divine powers, or maybe one of the greatest con artists in all of history. We're talking about the one, the only, Count Cagliostro.
So picture this. It's the Enlightenment in Europe, a time of science, of reason, but also a time when people were absolutely obsessed with the occult and superstition. It's this perfect storm of logic and magic. And right into the middle of it all walks this incredibly mysterious figure, and you better believe the whispers started in every royal court, every high society party. Is this a new messiah? Is he a prophet? Or is he just the most convincing charlatan we've ever seen? Everybody wanted to know, who is this guy?
And these weren't just small claims, you know? Cagliostro stepped onto the scene and announced he could basically perform miracles. He said he could turn cheap metal into pure gold, brew up potions that would let you live forever, and get this, create actual diamonds from a lump of coal. The craziest part? The most powerful people in the world, we're talking kings, queens, you name it, they totally bought it. They were lining up, practically begging for his services.
But here's the thing, the twist in the story. None of it, not a single bit of it was real. The entire persona, the miracles, the so-called ancient wisdom, it was all one of the most brilliant, most audacious lies ever constructed.
And when you look at the gap between the myth and the reality, it is just staggering. It's like night and day. On one hand, you've got the story he sold, Count Alessandro di Cagliostro, this mysterious nobleman with incredible powers. And on the other side, the truth, Giuseppe Balsamo, a guy born into poverty on the streets of Palermo, Sicily. He was a small-time scammer who just happened to realize his true gift wasn't magic, it was raw ambition and cunning. He literally built a whole new person out of thin air.
So, okay, if it was all a big act, how in the world did he pull it off? How did he manage to fool some of the smartest, richest people in all of Europe into thinking he was the real deal? Well, let's pull back the curtain and take a look at his stagecraft.
One of his most brilliant moves was creating his own secret society, the Egyptian Freemasonry. Now, this wasn't just some social club, it was a whole mythology he built around himself. He invented these incredibly elaborate exotic ceremonies, think strange symbols, incense, whispered secrets, and promised his wealthy followers that he'd teach them ancient Egyptian magic. It felt exclusive, it was super expensive, and it made him ridiculously powerful and influential.
All right, let's talk about the big one, the trick that really made him a legend. How did he stand in a room full of skeptics and convince them he could do the impossible, that he could perform alchemy?
It was pure 100% theater. First, you have the setup. He'd bring everyone into this dimly lit lab that looked like something out of a movie filled with bubbling potions and weird machines. Then came the performance. He'd chant, create clouds of smoke, maybe a few sudden flashes and bangs for dramatic effect. And then, after all that spectacle, boom, a little nugget of gold magically appears. The secret? It was just simple sleight of hand. Sometimes he'd have a piece of real gold hidden the whole time, or he'd use chemical tricks to create an alloy that just looked like gold. Simple, but effective.
You know, turning coal into diamonds was probably his most gutsy claim, and the method was just as clever and just as simple. He'd either palm a few tiny real diamonds and hide them in the handful of coal before he started, or even easier, he'd just present some beautifully cut pieces of glass and pass them off as the genuine article. See, he knew his audience was desperate for luxury, and he played on that greed perfectly.
But here's the thing. The tricks were clever for sure, but they weren't his real secret weapon. Cagliostro's true genius wasn't in chemistry or magic tricks. It was in understanding people. It was all about psychology.
And it all boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. He understood, maybe better than anyone, that if you offer people something they desperately, desperately want, whether it's eternal life, endless riches, or secret knowledge, they will happily ignore all the evidence that says it's a lie. People want to believe in magic. And this was his toolkit for making them believe. First off, he projected this incredible, rock-solid self-confidence. He never, ever broke character. Second, he surrounded himself with so much mystery that nobody could really pin down where he came from. But this last one is genius. He made himself hard to get and incredibly expensive. It's a classic marketing trick, right? The higher the price, the more valuable people think the product is. In his case, the product was miracles.
But of course, you can't keep a lie that big going forever. A life built on that kind of massive deception is bound to be fragile. For Count Cagliostro, a spectacular rise was always, inevitably, going to be followed by a pretty devastating fall. And wow, did it all come crashing down fast. He hits the absolute peak of his fame in the 1780s, but then his luck just runs out. He gets tangled up in this huge public scandal in the French court called the Diamond Necklace Affair, and it totally shatters his reputation among the elite. He flees to Rome, but there he runs into his final enemy, the Inquisition. The Catholic Church accused him of everything, sorcery, heresy, you name it. And just like that,
the game was over.
And isn't that the ultimate irony? The man who promised immortality to anyone who could afford it couldn't save himself. He died all alone in a prison cell in 1795, the so-called King of Alchemy, the man who had all of Europe in the palm of his hand, just faded away in a dark, quiet room.
So Cagliostro himself is long gone, obviously, but his playbook, his methods, they're absolutely timeless. That potent combination of making huge promises, having this incredible charisma, and playing on people's deepest fears and desires, that formula still works. It works today. So the real question to leave you with is, when you look around at our world, where do you see the ghost of Count Cagliostro? Where is he still at work?